I mean, mhm.
Rename me, huh? Yep. Talk on there. Yeah, okay. All right, bye.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I can hear you. Great, well.
I'm in the office right now, so I came
Oh.
in here because I had my papers and stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, this is a nice computer system after having worked on my laptop for all and I bet you do miss your screens.
Yes.
I've got 2 screens going on here. Yeah, dang it. So I'm going to share a screen just a second. So I pulled up a bunch of stuff. That's this one. You could see that, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I'll just go to the top of that and stop sharing on that one. And then if I come down here into this, can you see that one?
Yep.
Okay, and then I can just move. You could see me moving around here to these different pictures, can't you?
Tabs. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so they were supposed to have read all of this stuff. I gave it to them the middle of May. So I feel like as an old teacher, I'm very skeptical about how much people
read. Yep.
Sometimes they surprise me a lot, and sometimes they don't surprise me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay there. And then I did want to go to here and so that's kind of problematic because that screen share.
Yeah, you'll have to stop screen share and then re-screen share.
Oh, I see. Stop.
Yeah.
Yep, because I went into something else. Okay, so get up and then come down into here. And here's my Roachdale.
But if there's one you can select that will be your screen. So whatever you put on that screen, you'll see. If you don't select because you can select either your screen or you can select a specific application or a specific browser. But if you select just the monitor, the screen, I think it's the very first one, no matter what you pull up and take down, it'll show. As long as you don't select that specific application. Like if you select that PDF application to share, then that's all we'll see. Then you'll have to stop sharing and then go to something else. So test it out. Start screen share and select that very top left option.
Oh, I am so with you now. So screen 2,
Yeah. And I think they may be labeled. You might be able to see the labels on them to let you know if
okay,
you're sharing the screen or the actual application.
I'm with you. So now you can see that PowerPoint again.
Yeah. And now just click on your PDF. Well,
Okay, sorry. I
just to
want to
test it
test,
real quick.
yeah, I want to test something else here. I want to test and see if, so I'm going to close out anything in these applications that I have that are open. That I don't want open. You know what I mean? Close out whatever I've got on my system right now, like even Outlook. I don't need Outlook right now. Close that. This is a Word doc, so I'll leave that open. Oh, shoot. Okay, so now I've lost my, but I got it back. So I'll close that launch meeting Zoom, can't I? Okay, and that started playing. Could you hear that audio?
I kind of heard something.
Okay. It's going to play as soon as it comes on. So I'm going to bring that down. Okay, so when am I on screen? I'm not. I'm not sharing now. So when I go in here, Madison's on. Hi, Madison. Are you muted, Madison? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I just unmuted. Hi.
How are you? Thanks for joining
Okay.
us today.
Yeah.
We're just playing around just a little bit to see what's the best way to do some screen share. I'm gonna move around inside my computer a bit as we work on this, and I don't want to give you vertigo trying to go. So I think we're in pretty good shape here. Donnie, you advise me if you see me struggling with a crazy application to this share here. Hi, Eric's on board too. Eric, I think you're muted and video is off.
Yeah, my internet's really spotty, so video kind of just slows it down. So I'm just gonna do audio if that's okay.
I think we're just fine with that. I think that's fine. We can relate to, technical difficulties. I hope not today, but
Right.
we can relate. And so we're just kind of waiting for Daryl to show up. And then Tracy also said she was going to join us, at least for part of the meeting today. So that's good. So have we got rain everywhere? Madison, are you guys in rain?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
been raining nonstop since yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
We got a little bit of small hail.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah.
My boyfriend is on a fishing trip on the Big Hole River, and they were over by Butte, and they're headed home early because it was just snowing.
I was just going to ask Eric if he got snow. Yeah.
I actually live in Helena, but yeah, I think Butte was getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're in Helena right now, Eric, right?
Yeah, I spend a few days a week in Butte, but when I was there yesterday, it was sure getting dark quick, so I got out of there because I think it was coming.
Didn't you get like some ridiculous 10 inches of snow?
They did last week. Yeah, they had some parts had like 8 inches. Yeah, it was definitely killed a lot of flower beds. I know that.
Oh yeah.
I bet.
So I was born and raised in Butte, so I know what Butte weather is like. Yeah, you're just crazy to put a flower in before June 1, and then you could snow in July. I remember the 4th of July, and my fireworks would not work because everything was soaking wet in the snow.
Jeez. Everybody keeps telling me, welcome to Montana.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm like, when will it stop snowing?
It doesn't. It could snow on any given day.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
well,
just crazy.
I was always told Montana has 2 seasons, winter and road construction, and I
Hmm.
will always believe that.
Oh yeah,
Right.
it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yeah. And sometimes road construction in the winter, I don't know, whatever they can do, I guess. Yeah. So has anybody taken any road trips recently? No, we're under COVID. Huh? I can't go anywhere. Yep, I haven't either. I'm hoping to get to Glacier Park though.
Me too.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
going to the Sun Highway is partially open, so I'm waiting for the, open from one end to the other.
Sure.
And we sometimes just go and get in the car and take a day to go over going to the Sun Highway, and then that's it. And then we go home. It's a long day, but try and make it happen. Yeah.
This weekend, if all goes well, I'm going camping in the Bighorns for my birthday.
Oh, wow.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's supposed to be in the 60s there this weekend and, low 40s at night. But this week there looks kind of like here, but the high is like 40 and rainy and maybe some snow. So hopefully it'll be a fun trip. I think it will.
Yeah,
either way,
yeah.
but
Well, camping in the cold is okay. It's the camping in the wet and cold that,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would take camping in the cold over camping when it's warm. So
Yeah, yeah, I would too. I like being up in the mountains. Well, I've got 2:00 on my phone, and then I've got 2:07 on my phone and 2:00 on my computer, which is always a little bit off. And so I don't see Tracy, and I don't see Daryl, but maybe we can just kind of start out with a few introductions here. So Madison, I know that I've read some things about you in Bible, but maybe you want to just kind of tell us a few things about yourself and start us off.
sure. Okay. So I moved to Montana in January of 2018. I moved here sight unseen, never set foot in the state, to take a role as an AmeriCorps Vista here in Billings with the Native American Development Corporation. And my year was up and they offered me a job and I'm still there. And I moved here from Vermont. And I went home to Vermont after I graduated college in South Dakota for a spell. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do and came across AmeriCorps, and that's what brought me here. And now at NADC, my title is Organizational Development Outreach Coordinator, but I kind of just do whatever needs to be done. I'm sure many of us have been in a role like that a time or two.
Sure.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I'm at now, and I try to go hiking and camping as much as I possibly can, and I'm trying my hand at gardening for the first time ever.
Excellent.
Been
Yeah.
interesting so far.
So Madison, when you were in school, what was your discipline?
So I ended up graduating with a degree in Spanish and a degree in global studies. I started thinking I was gonna go on to physical therapy school, so I also completed the prerequisites for that. And I was in I was pursuing our exercise science program, and I got accepted, and then I panicked because I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And I then went to visit my grandmother in Puerto Rico, and then I went and lived in Boston for a summer and took a few classes at Boston University. And the last day I applied to study abroad, and then I moved to Costa Rica for a semester to solely focus on Spanish. I came back the day before classes started that following semester. I went to coffee with my advisor, who became one of my really good friends, and he said, Madison, you currently have not registered for your classes. you only have a degree right now in Spanish and not even to teach or anything, just humanities Spanish. You can speak the language, which won't necessarily get you that far. And so I was like, I just don't know what I want to do. And so I ended up kind of picking up the global studies major because it paired really well and I didn't have to do a whole lot of extra time to be able to achieve that. So that's how I ended up with global studies. And my parents constantly, even today, ask me, so what do you do with a degree in global studies? I said, well, set myself up to do anything I want. That's what.
Yeah, you know, certain degrees allow you to do whatever you want to do with those degrees, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. And that was I went to South Dakota State University. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Madison. So Eric, I think I'm going to have you go next.
Yeah, I'm Eric. I'm the Food and Ag Director for Headwaters RC&D. I've been in economic development for about 5 years. Headwaters is my second stop along the road. Previously, I was with the Economic Development Organization in Helena. Yeah, I've worn a lot of different hats. I was primarily doing community development when I first started out. So the food and ag position's been a little bit of a transition for me, kind of getting on a different side of the table, but I'm still being involved with a lot of community development type stuff. So yeah, obviously the food and ag walks hand in hand with, cooperative development. I think that's a huge background and tool in Montana. So Headwaters has, I think, always been one of those organizations that's had a CDS in-house. So I guess I get to wear that new hat. So here I am. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to jumping in on this. I like the initiative, and they seem simple in nature, but I also think they can be somewhat complex, but I like working on complex things. So I'm looking forward to being able to provide the TA side of all this and working with some of my clients in Southwest Montana.
Good. Yep. So when you went to school, what was your discipline?
I have a degree in public administration.
Uh-huh. Where'd you go to school, Eric?
I went to Missoula.
Did you? Yeah, me
Yep.
too. I'm a Missoula person as well.
Yep. Born and raised in Montana.
Yeah.
And educated.
Yeah, me too. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's not so good. I discovered sometimes interviewing for different positions, they were looking for people that were educated outside of Montana. So, being educated in Montana is just fine unless you're looking for a job in Montana.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's how that goes. I don't know, kind of crazy. So Donnie, Donnie's our IT person. Donnie, just tell us a bit about yourself. He's our right-hand man, and this isn't going to happen without him. So Donnie, help us out here.
Oh yeah, I'm Donnie. From Columbus, Ohio. Came out here to Montana. Went back to school kind of late, and interned at MCDC for my last semester, and they as like you, Madison, they created a job for me and asked me to stay, and I stayed, and here I am. So that's not a long, great story like you guys. Nothing really exciting, but that's it. Behind the scenes,
Of course
IT
it is.
guy.
Yep, Donnie keeps us going technologically. So without him, we'd all be just kind of, with pencil and nothing else. So I'll take a couple of seconds to tell you about me. Born and raised in Butte, went to school in Missoula, got a bachelor's in business administration, started working for an advertising agency. I worked for 6 years at an advertising agency. I taught at a private college for 6 years. I worked for a corporation called the Interregional Financial Group. IFG Leasing was the name of the business that I was working for in Great Falls for 5 years. So I stayed at places for about 5-6 years and moved on, except when I started to teach at Great Falls College, and I stayed there 26 years. So they closed the business program on that campus, and I started looking for a little something else to end the career. and found the Cooperative Development Center needed somebody. So I applied for the job. And interestingly enough, Madison, that was January of 2018. I got hired. So we have a date thing going on there. So I've been here since January of 2018. And I started out strong at 40 hours a week, full-time job. And now I've scaled back down to 8 hours a week. So I am the most part-time of part-time people here. And then this July and August, I will be 0 hours for a couple of months, and then we'll reassess in September to see if I'm actually fully retired at that point or not. So with my degree in business, I also got a master's degree in management, and I ended up getting a doctorate degree because it's easy to go to school when you're teaching school. I got a doctorate degree in education. So that's kind of what my background is. So I feel pretty darn comfortable with this idea of different kinds of ownership of businesses with sole proprietorship, partnership, S corporations, C corporations. And those are topics I think that not everybody really realizes are out there, that there are they're kind of a starting point for when you are thinking about a business. You really should think about that form right away, because if you settle on a form and then try to make a decision about going either from a sole proprietorship to a partnership or from a partnership to a corporation, you have to undo some of the work that you've already got done in your business in order to move into that form. So this idea of forms of ownership are really important. And that's really where I saw the cooperative model coming in. Historically, education has not taught the cooperative model very well. And so if you take business classes, you're not going to find much in there as it relates to the cooperative model. Sometimes so little that all you get is just this bare hint that it's a little bit a different kind of structure than the others, but it really is very different than the others. And I kind of did a little research on cooperatives while I was still teaching at the college. And I got the good fortune of going to Wisconsin with the Farmers Union Insurance and taking some of my students to a conference on co-ops. And it lasted for about 3 days. We kind of immersed ourselves in everything co-op and came back deciding that, you know, that's a pretty darn good business model. And so I started teaching it in my classes, even before they closed the program, using the cooperative model as a model that's just as relevant as S Corps and C Corps and LLCs and all the different kinds of ownership structures. So, so the cooperative model, to me, kind of has a special place because it has this function of pulling people together, where the for-profit model, though it can pull people together, tends to be a divisive sort of structure that is sort of us versus them in some cases. So one of the things I wanted to do was just kind of reach out to the Rochdale video. Has anybody, Daryl, Eric, there? I don't see Daryl yet. Nope. So Eric, have you seen the Rochdale video yet?
I haven't. I've just had time to read the material.
Excellent. Excellent. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to jump us to this video for a second and let you just see. It's 5 minutes. It's a 5-minute video. And I think this will play just fine for us. Can you see that video?
Yep, I can see your screen. Yep.
And you, okay. And now I'm going to just crank the volume up just a little bit, and I'm going to hit the play part. Audio okay? Can you see that, Madison?
I can see your screen, but I just see like a black. Oh, well, now I don't see it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just a big like silver bar is what I see in the middle of the screen.
Yeah, that's what I see too.
Can't see the video really, huh?
Nope.
Nope.
Well, that stinks.
It was that you're like I could see the YouTube screen, but now I just see like a black screen with a strange, silver white bar down the middle.
Still?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So of course it's playing like gangbusters right here for me, but what I'm gonna do is stop that share and let you know that that link to this particular video is available inside our PowerPoint that I've got. And I encourage you to go look at it. It's only 5 minutes. But I kind of visit that little video every once in a while just because it's kind of an inspiration. And it's really where cooperatives really started to form, is in Rochdale, England in the 1800s. And the very first cooperative was, in fact, a food cooperative, like a wholesale food cooperative. And interestingly enough, I'm working on that right now. We're trying to figure out whether we can get a food wholesale grocery store cooperative going in Montana, because the COVID-19 really brought to the foreground these ideas about, pardon me, supply chain issues, about being able to get groceries to rural locations. It's not a new problem. It's a problem we've had for a while. But when we started to talk about it in certain circles, like for example, with our cooperative grocery stores that we help here at MCDC, we would say, you know, we need to figure out this supply chain. We need to figure out who our wholesalers are. We need to figure out who the vendors are. And then all of a sudden, the vendors would get nicer again, and they would start to serve the stores a little bit better. And we'd say, okay, well, it's fixed now for a while. And so we kind of kept kicking that can down the road until COVID hit. And that's when we discovered that our rural grocery stores are so much at the mercy of these vendors. And when they would put their orders in, the vendors would say, yeah, I know you didn't get any toilet paper, but I filled my big client orders before I filled my rural store, small client orders. So I'm sorry you didn't get any. Well, we're not liking that idea so much. So we really are starting to take a look at that wholesale grocery store idea. And it kind of feels like it comes full circle. So every once in a while, I'll go out and watch that Rochdale just to get a little inspired and to hear about the accomplishments they had at that time. So please take a couple minutes when you can to go check that one out. So I'm going to try another screen share. Let's hope I get better results. And I'm just going to go into this PowerPoint for just a little while so that we can just kind of get launched here. Can you see that one okay? Can you see the cooperative business model PowerPoint okay?
Yep.
Excellent, thanks. So I'm just going to put it in slideshow mode. Sometimes it's a little slow to respond. Oops. Okay, it's not letting me do it the way I want it to, so I'm just going to do this. So really what we're trying to do really is just talk about the model itself and how it compares to others, and I'm going to go pretty quickly. So I'm giving you in the quick and dirty couple of minutes here what we sometimes would take about a half a day to go over, some of the history, some of the players, but I feel like you guys have been in this game long enough. And that you'll ask questions if we've left some gaps here. So we'll start with MCDC. So our mission as an organization is to promote and develop cooperatives. So we focus on this business model almost exclusively. And in fact, if someone says, well, wait a second, we've decided we want to go to a partnership or to an S Corp or an LLC, then we will recommend that they go and see some other experts. Even though we know what that stuff is and how to start those businesses, we feel like that is inconsistent with our mission and our funding source. So we will, take those individuals to some SBDCs or some of the economic development organizations that are around the state that are tasked with working with those other models. We are a nonprofit. We're a 501c3 center, and we are funded by the Department of Agriculture and the state of Montana. We are one of the very few nonprofit organizations that has a state legislative appropriation. We get $65,000 from the state of Montana each year. We also work with the Montana Council of Cooperatives, which is a trade association in the state of Montana of the 160 plus cooperatives that are in Montana. And they help fund us slightly, so they give us around $5,000. And then we use that money to leverage with some match money for an RCDG grant, a Rural Cooperative Development Grant from the Department of Agriculture. So that's pretty much how we're funded. We also have some sponsorships from that trade association and others like the electric cooperatives and credit unions, and also from just existing cooperatives who make donations to the center here to keep the operation going. There's 5 staff here in Great Falls. 5 staff sounds like we have 5 full-time. We don't. Tracy McIntyre is our executive director. Juanetta is our office manager. Donnie is our IT person. I'm at just tiny half-time, and then Erica Bergman is also a part-time person. We are, in fact, looking for maybe a person who will step into my role as I start to step out of the role. So we're looking maybe for a program director at some point. In order for us to serve the entire state, we use 11 cooperative development specialists, of which, Eric, you are here at Headwaters Resource, and Madison, you and Daryl will be down here when we start to fill in with your location on our map here. So we have about 11 different locations and specialists across the state. So if something's happening in Wolf Point or in Glasgow, we call Tori at Great Northern and we say, can you help out with working with a cooperative or a group of people who are interested in starting a co-op, or there's a problem out there maybe the cooperative model can solve. So that's kind of how we reach the entire state. All of these folks are on sort of part-time contracts to do work for us. So that's one way for us to connect with the entire state. So if you had to define a cooperative business, and that's always a good place to start when we talk about these things, the official definition of it is that it's an autonomous association of persons voluntarily coming together to meet economic, social, and cultural needs. And they are jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises. So that says a lot, but really, there are a few very fundamental things that we know about co-op businesses that make that definition a little wordier than it needs to be, but nonetheless, that's the official definition. The profits are taxed only once, and C corporations, conventional corporations, are the ones that are double taxed. So if a conventional corporation makes money, they are taxed on their profits, and then if they pay stockholders dividends, then the stockholders are also taxed on that same money. So that's a double taxation structure for C corporations. And the idea of taxes is really one of the things that makes these structures different from one another. So, so the taxes are importantly taxed only once, even though a cooperative is a corporation. In all states, it's a type of corporation. Some business models, like, for example, LLCs and S-Corps, they have a uniform law, a federal uniform law that identifies what those are across every single state. Cooperatives do not have a uniform law. So that means that individual states can have differences in their laws. And that's why the laws of the state for cooperatives are so important to us. And that's really why we're kind of focusing in on the Kay's book, because you need to know Montana law, because you'll read things about other states who are handling cooperatives in a certain way, but it won't apply to us. So you really got to know which state you're in and what are the laws. Welcome, Tracy. Thanks for joining us today.
Sorry I'm so late. Meetings
Yeah.
keep running late on me today, so.
We kind of got rolling down the road here a little bit, Tracy. We did some introductions, got to know Madison and Eric. I haven't seen Daryl yet. Donnie has joined us, but he's kind of stepping in and out doing some stuff.
Okay.
So basically what we're doing is just kind of going through a bit of a PowerPoint quickly that I pulled together, and then we're going to do straight Q&A.
Perfect.
I also want to mention to everybody that we're going to try and get some Salesforce information in. Donnie's willing to help out with some Salesforce questions you might have. We'll try to do that about 3:30. And that's when he will be able to join us. So I'm going to dip back to this shared screen on profits. So for a corporation, generally a C Corp, double taxed. Okay, but this particular corporation, the cooperative, is taxed only once, either with the corporate income or it's taxed as income to the members who receive some of that profit back through the form of what we call a patronage. And that's based on the purchases or the services that they use at that particular co-op. So the more a member uses the services of a particular co-op, the more they have a claim to the profits of the co-op. So how do we know how much they use it? Well, every time there is a sales transaction with a member and the cooperative, they track it. They track that sales volume. And the more sales volume a person has with the cooperative, the more claim they have to the assets. And it's by percentage. So if I happen to shop a whole bunch at this little grocery store and I represent 50% of the sales of that grocery store, then I have a claim to 50% of the profits that are there. And every member that also shops would have a percentage that is associated with their sales or purchases to the co-op. That's different. That's unique to this model. And so, if you have any questions about that, stop me in my tracks right now. And we might clarify that just a little bit, that whole patronage thing. Patronage sort of feels like dividends, like if you own stock in a corporation and they paid you dividends. But the dividends are not based on how much you use that corporation in a regular C Corp. It's based on the earnings that the organization earns and how much they declare to be a dividend. Co-ops share those profits back to their members in a much more generous sort of fashion. And in fact, some co-ops don't pay any taxes at all. It is completely a pass-through of those profits to the members. So the business is owned and controlled by the very people who use its services. Also kind of interestingly unique. I use the services of McDonald's. Here's my coffee cup. I buy it a lot. I own shares of stock, but I have very little control inside that organization, even though I might own a couple hundred shares, because shares of stock are sold in different volume to different individuals, different investors. And I can buy 100 shares of McDonald's stock or 200 shares or 300 shares, but not in a co-op. In a co-op, I can only buy 1 share of common stock. And that 1 share of common stock gives me a vote. But in McDonald's, I might have 300 votes. Still might not mean anything if there are millions of shares of McDonald's stock out there, and there are. And yes, I do get my 300 votes, but they are so puny, they do not carry much weight. In a co-op, 1 share, 1 vote, every member has an equal weight in the governance of the organization through their voting. So here's the Rochdale video. So if you guys want to go out to the video, we tried to show that, Tracy, and it looked great on my computer, but it was just no good for Madison and Eric, so we abandoned. So here is the link to that Rochdale video, and I'll send you these slides in an email right after our session, so you can have these slides as well, okay? So then, what's the essence of cooperatives? Cooperatives are organized to serve member needs, and they are focused on generating benefits rather than returns to the investors. So if I was to say in a nutshell what's a cooperative, I would say it's an enterprise designed to bring benefits that are needed to a collection of people. I mean, I'm not in charge of creating a new definition for co-ops, but I would say this idea of benefits is central to the idea about co-ops. And so it's member driven. It's member driven, not investor driven. Even though the members are investors, the members are really seeking benefits that they can get from the cooperative. And that makes it different than really any other form of ownership that's out there. So back to these benefits or principles or practices. In your reading for today, let me see, the book that I don't have a copy of in front of me. The Cooperative Principles and Practices, the big giant one that was like 121 pages. In that particular entry to that document, they really do talk about the user-owned and user-controlled features. The user benefits are, I'm getting services or access to products that I can't otherwise get. And that's the benefit that I get from that. The user-owned is I invest my money into this enterprise so that I actually own some of the assets. And because I own some of the assets, I can control some of those assets. And the control really comes from my ability to vote for a representative board of directors who will govern the organization according to my influence. Those three pieces, the benefits, the owning factor, and the controlling factor, are also fundamental to cooperatives. And these 7 international recognized principles. And these are internationally recognized and really emanated out of Rochdale. So if you go back to the Rochdale video, you'll also see that these principles come up. So I'm going to take you to those principles for just a second. The 7 principles are voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, members' economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information. Education, P5, principle number 5, an important part of what we do here at MCDC. P6 is cooperation among cooperatives. That's kind of enormous. In a competitive environment in other forms of ownership, there really isn't a whole lot necessarily of cooperation. There's competitiveness between those entities. And for cooperatives, that competitiveness really just doesn't have much value. Cooperatives help cooperatives. So if we were to call a cooperative today and say, you know, we need some help with this or that or the other thing, we are probably going to get a pretty good reception from that particular cooperative because of this very principle. It's the underpinning of who they are. And number 7, importantly, concern for the community. And the community is who? Well, the people that own this business, you know, they're part of the community. These fundamental principles, we here at MCDC have a series of videos that you can watch that are on our website that are part of these co-op principles. So we have 1 through 5 completed. Number 6, Tracy, is 6, cooperation among cooperatives. That one's completed as well.
It is completed. We were going to do a couple minor changes to it, but it is out and available.
Okay. But the last one, concern for community, that one's a work in progress. So we haven't got that one done yet, but plans to complete that, I think. And really, the Montana Council on Cooperatives helped us fund the development and production of these videos. So if you have time, go to our website, and you'll be able to see these individual. And there'll be interviews of different individuals across the state who are working in co-ops, general managers, employees, talking about how these particular principles play out in their organization. So a little bit about Montana. There's about 160 co-ops. About 80 to 85 of those co-ops are members of the Montana Council of Cooperatives. There are now fewer than 30 farm supply co-ops. There used to be more than that, but they have done a lot of consolidation. There's an increasing number of marketing and distribution co-ops that are out there. We've got about 51 credit unions, also mergers and acquisitions inside the credit unions. There's 25 rural electrics, 8 telecommunications, and quite a number of other different kinds of co-ops that, you know, grocery store and all kinds of different co-ops that start up with Chapter 15. We'll talk about that in a second. So Montana's legal structure. If you go out to this location right here, you will be taken to the Montana Code Annotated. And really you can just Google Montana Code Annotated, and then it'll ask you, you want to go to the table of contents, and that's where you're going to go, is to right here to this link. And again, I'll provide this for you so you can make a quick access. You're going to go down to title number 35, which really talks about corporations and business structures in Montana. And then chapters 15 through 18 are going to discuss very specific types of corporations like the co-op. Chapter 15 is the cooperative association. It is a for-profit structure. Now, that alone makes it kind of weird, because in most states, all cooperatives would be classified as non-profit. So in California, for example, cooperatives are non-profit by their very definition. Childcare cooperatives, really virtually any kind, is classified as a non-profit. It doesn't mean that they don't make a profit though, right? I mean, non-profits do make money. It's just what they do with the money. And in California, those are non-profit organizations by definition. So Montana, weirdly, has this cooperative association that is for profit. I don't think that there's any industry sector that we can't dip into and create a cooperative association for. None. But you know from your experience that cooperatives tend to sort of wander around in the agricultural world. And Eric, you've known that because of your food and ag training and experiences, that co-ops seem to come up in that particular industry sector almost more than it does in any other. And the Department of Agriculture is so much a player in the success of cooperatives because of its influence in the agricultural sector. So chapter 15 is for profit. Chapter 16 is a nonprofit. It's an agricultural association. We don't deal with that one very much because it requires a pledge of real estate, property, real property. It's a quasi-public kind of structure, which means that they have to petition a district court in order to get approval to form one of these. So chapter 16 is one that we sort of leap over, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We're going to leap over 16 and go straight into Cooperative Agricultural Marketing Association. A lot of big words. And then that one, again, nonprofit, and it's considered chapter number 17 in the code. Chapter 18 takes care of the electrics and the telecommunications. And that's also a nonprofit, and it is for utilities. The utilities have their own trade associations that help them form the cooperatives, and they are also tied to other federal laws like the Federal Communications Commission, etc. Just like the credit unions are tied to the banking laws that make them cooperatives that we typically don't deal with either. So Montana Cooperative Development Center pretty much hangs out in chapter 15 and chapter 17.
Marilyn, where do the credit unions actually fall in that?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question. I don't think that they are really addressed in these co-op laws for Montana. They're calling themselves cooperatives, but it's banking laws and regulations that give them their right to do business in the state, but their form is exactly what you know a credit union to be, which is a member-owned. So I think that's an excellent question. And I have asked that question before and gotten answers that I thought were completely unsatisfactory. In the interest of not giving you something that's unsatisfactory, I'm going to say, I don't really know where to drop into the statutes. Yeah.
Thank you, because I've had the same conversation and I could not figure out where they belong in here. So
Right.
okay.
And so if you go into some state chartered legislation or statutes, the cooperatives are mentioned in there. So really their right to do business in the state of Montana is a banking sort of industry controlled sector. I do know that the banking industries, other than cooperatives, really don't like the co-ops too much because of this idea of this tax consideration that they have. So they don't pay taxes like the big banks do, and the big banks feel that that's a huge advantage that the credit unions have over the banking structure. Again, though, the banking industry credit unions return the profits of the business back to their members. My bank doesn't do that. I can hardly get any interest rate out of my savings account from them, you know. So yeah, so there's that very fundamental difference that it's a co-op. Just a reminder for you that most states are formed as nonprofit corporations. And we'll talk a little bit more about this exempted stock issue, which makes it is a really important distinction about cooperatives as well. So how would we start a co-op? I'm going to kind of take you through this phases of co-ops for just a real quick second here. This one literally is chapter 15. So kind of hang your hat on the idea that we are really now talking about chapter 15. What could that be? That could be grocery stores, that could be ski hills, that could be really any industry sector we want to get into. It could also be an agricultural sector. We'll talk a little bit more. So there isn't any real sector that co-op associations can't dip into. And this is the phases that they would go through in order to start. So in the exploratory phase, we would have people talking about, you know, somebody ought to do this. Somebody ought to open up the local, you know, theater. Somebody ought to open up a grocery store here. Whatever those ideas might be, you get some people that are talking about it and they start to, you know, discuss things with each other. And then they would say, you know, well, how are we going to do that? So we might get a call from somebody that says, you know, we're thinking about a co-op and we're not sure what a co-op is, but we're thinking that we would like to start one, and how would we do that? And so we have initial consultations, discussions, discoveries. And then we might say, well, where would it go? Well, you know, if you've already got a theater, it makes sense to just put it in the one that you've got in your community to turn that into a co-op. You might invite the public to come in and start to talk about the possibility of that. And we might start to create some committees out of that public interest to help form, you know, some leadership and create some groups of people that are willing to work on the investigation of the possibility of this. So Eric, your experience maybe with the Butte grocery store, it went exactly like this. There were people who were saying, you know, the grocery store in the Hennessy building, you know, closed, and that shouldn't be closed. We should have an uptown grocery store. And they started to talk and went down to Butte, and holy cow, there was like 100 people showed up at this public information session. I didn't even have close to the number of handouts I was supposed to have for that because so many people showed up, but there was interest in it. And so that's really how this gets started. And we recruit some more people and we talk about the communications and we say the same thing over and over again, because as new people join us, we want to bring them along. And so that very first phase, that exploratory phase, is exactly that. We're exploring the idea. We haven't done anything with it yet. We're talking and talking about it. and we're starting to think about how we'd organize ourselves. In the deliberative phase, we start creating committees, and those committees start to do some investigations, and we decide what those committees might be. Maybe we have a site selection committee. Maybe we have a financial committee who's going to investigate all of the financial aspects of it, maybe create some pro formas or something like that. We divide it up into these different steering committees, and these committees are chaired and membered by people who just expressed an interest in doing this. MCDC is not an incubator of cooperatives. We don't start a co-op and then find some people to run it. We help people who want to run a co-op get it started. And that's a pretty important distinction, because not all cooperative development centers work like that. Some of them actually are incubator types, but MCDC is not an incubator type. In this deliberative phase, steering committees might do market surveys and do some analysis of data, like the target audience, and do some demographic information. They might start to try and promote the idea a little bit more, gather more people into the conversation to find out if there's sufficient interest to create a membership. As we progress through this deliberative phase, we might get to the point where we're saying, okay, what are the legal ramifications of us starting to do this? Not the legal as in making ourselves a legal entity, but are there things that are illegal about what we'd like to do? We probably don't want to be breaking the law in our cooperative. And we also might, in fact, do a feasibility study, which would determine how feasible it is that this business could operate and be sustainable inside that community. We might have to get some extra business advice on that. MCDC has turned to SBDCs to help us build pro formas for feasibility studies. We've gone to outside experts. We sometimes are called upon to help find some resources that might help an organization develop a feasibility study. And this analysis, this homework of what we're trying to do, is going to help inform a decision about whether we move forward or not. The feasibility study typically is a go or no go point. We're either the feasibility study is gonna tell us, yep, you can make a go of this, or wow, this was just such a bad idea. You better all just back away from this idea. So the feasibility study really helps us make a determination about advancing to the next. If we have a feasibility study that says it's a go, maybe this is where we start to think about writing the full-blown business plan. The feasibility study generally is the marketing and the financial sections of a business plan. So here we would talk about management, we would talk about employees, we would talk about all the features that go into a business plan and start to think about it from that point. So let's just say that we've decided that it's a go. Then we're going to go into the legal phase. And how do we set up this cooperative? Well, the very first thing we're going to do is file something we call an intent to incorporate. I don't know, when I first heard this, I thought, you're interested in starting a co-op, so now you're filing your intent, and then at some point later, you're going to file your incorporation. And well, that seems like that's just way too many steps, but it's here. This is what it is. It's not articles of incorporation you're filing here, it's your intent to incorporate. And with that comes something that's called the exemption letter. Now, here's a little piece you want to jot down. The intent to incorporate goes to the Secretary of State. There's a fee for filing your intent to incorporate. At the very same time, you're going to file an exemption letter with the Deputy Commissioner of Securities. And that's just simply a letter. And we have those forms here, so don't get excited about what they look like. We have the forms. They're fill-in forms. And that exemption letter has to include a copy of the intent to incorporate. And they're sent at the same time. One to the Secretary of State, the intent to incorporate, and the exemption letter with a copy of the intent to incorporate to the Deputy Commissioner of Securities. magically, they talk to each other. And they decide that both of them are happy with what you've done. And when that happens, the Secretary of State will send out a license as commissioners, okay? In the intent to incorporate, you list the people who are trying to organize this particular corporation, and you list the individuals who may be the selected commissioners. And who are the commissioners? The commissioners are individuals who can go out and solicit the sale of shares of stock that represent the membership inside the cooperative. This exemption letter gives you permission to bypass blue sky laws. Blue sky laws are the Securities and Exchange Commission laws that exist in the state of Montana. And if you are starting an S corporation, or if you're starting a C corporation, you have to comply with blue sky laws. Blue sky. I think it came out of this idea that this agency protects you from purchasing a piece of blue sky, which might be just a complete sham, right? I mean, if I said to you, Madison, want a piece of the sky? I'll sell you this piece of blue sky, and it's, you know, there's nothing to it at all. It's just me trying to get money from you. So the blue sky laws were intended to protect investors in the state of Montana against investments that may be sham or fraud investments. Cooperatives get to be exempt from those laws. So that means you get to save reams and reams of paper and a whole bunch of money that you would have spent at an attorney's office to get your documents in order to sell shares of stock to the public. That's huge. That really is huge, your ability to just bypass this. Now, does this mean that your investment is sort of shady? Well, no, it does not mean that at all. It only means that the Deputy Commissioner of Securities is willing to allow you to sell these shares of stock. You need to disclose to the people that you're selling these shares of stock every bit of information that you would if you were a big fat C corporation. You still have to tell them what your business is about, what you hope to do with it, and what you're going to do with their money. You also have to tell them what the expectation of is a return for their money. And at the beginning of cooperatives, we really caution the cooperative to not make any promises about the return on the money. You can't make that promise. In fact, any big corporation can't make that promise. You're just hoping that you get a return. So you're disclosing information about the cooperative, and you're telling people about the benefits of the cooperative. And those commissioners are then licensed by the Secretary of State to go out and subscribe members, okay? That means you'll have a subscription form that says, here is what you're subscribing to. And the subscription form itself, again, we have those, is literally a promissory note. So let's just say that I am working with a cooperative, and Madison is, you know, in her community, and I say to Madison, do you think you'd be interested in joining a cooperative for a little grocery store in your rural community? Madison says, sure. And I say, okay, here is a subscription, and this is how many shares of stock we're going to sell, and this is what the value of those shares of stock are, and this is what the intent of the corporation is. And if you're interested, would you be willing to spend $100 for one share of common stock? And Madison says, yeah, you know, maybe. Yeah, I'd do that. I wouldn't mind having a grocery store closer to home. So she signs that subscription form. That's like a promissory note, Madison. Now you have said you promise if this particular co-op gets launched, that in fact you will cough up $100 for a share of common stock, okay? To my knowledge, no cooperative, since I have been here, has ever pursued their legal rights to enforce that promissory note. So let's just say Madison later says, you know, I'm moving back to Vermont. I don't need this share. No, I'm not giving you $100 for a grocery store I can't even shop at. And even though it's a promissory note and it has legal weight to it, the co-op is going to say, oh, that makes sense, Madison. You can't shop here. So we're not going to hold you to this. So I have never heard of a cooperative holding a subscriber liable for that promissory note. It's just creates ill will. It's $100. It's just not going to be that much for you. So even though that subscription notice is a promissory note and carries legal weight, I've never heard of anybody going after it. At $100, you'd have to go to small claims court anyway to get them to pay that. And that's, you know, there's more hassle than the $100 is worth. So, so the filing of those documents with the Secretary of State and the Commissioner of Securities allows you to be recognized as a beginning corporation, your intent to incorporate, plus you get this exemption letter, which, by the way, is not tied to the Secretary of State office. It's tied to the Deputy Commissioner of Securities office. So you have to keep track of that. That's an important document that you have to hang on to. And then you get this license from the Secretary of State in order to have your individuals be commissioners. And those people then can go out and solicit those subscriptions. You do not collect money from those people on those subscriptions, however, at this point. You cannot collect money. These are just promises to give you $100. These are just promises. And let's just say that you've been working on this for 6 months and you've got 10 promises. You can't run your co-op on $1,000. You know, it's just not enough money. You just don't have enough. So at that particular point in time, you don't collect on your subscriptions. But what if you got 10,000 members? Now you've got some resources, and now you're going to proceed with starting up this co-op. And in order to proceed, you have to collect on those subscriptions. So at some point, the organization has to say, we've got to have this much money, or we're not going to advance to the next step. We have to have that much money. So our legal phase at part 1 is just getting ourselves set up. Let's go to part 2. Design and distribute the subscription agreements, publicize and assist steering committees with enrolling prospective subscribers. This is where we're trying to get as many people as we can to get into the dollar figure that's going to help us launch this, start this up. Okay, that's phase 2. So phase 3 then is going to be final incorporation filing. We have to have a notice of a meeting. We have to have a report of the minutes of the meeting. You have to have a list of all the subscribers that filled that subscription notice in. You have to have the bylaws of the organization ready to go. And once that's all turned in, you get to have what they call the Certificate of Complete Organization from the Secretary of State. So that means that you are in fact incorporated. Prior to this, you just have an intent to incorporate, but now that you've done all of these steps right here in this particular part, in this final filing, now you're going to have a certificate of completion. So here's that part 3 again. Notice of the meeting, election of a board of directors. You have to have an initial meeting of the board, and that has to be announced to all of the membership, and it has to be done in a way that's consistent with you communicating with these people. Do you have email addresses for them? Are you making phone calls to all these people? How are you connecting with them? You have to have a list of all the people that have subscribed. Even if it's 10,000, you gotta have a list of them. You have to have the bylaws done, okay? Then once you've done that, then we can move into an operational phase. And at this particular phase right here, now that we've got our final incorporation paperwork, we can go collect on the money. We can go to all those people that signed a subscription and say, okay, we're ready to get going. I'd like your check for $100 right now. That's when you can collect the money. When you feel like you have enough resources to actually start the business. So then you launch it. And then MCDC helps you along the way because things will happen. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of this setup or these phases that we go through. You're saying, I don't like all of that paperwork. Oh my gosh. No worries. We have forms for you and we will walk you through each one of those pieces of paper that you have to file. So then here's a little bit of information about me. I just left this slide in here in case you didn't have my email, but I'm pretty sure you do. And then our regular office telephone number is 727-1517. Well, you know, we're under COVID stuff, so this number goes straight to Winetta and she will connect you with us if you don't currently have any other information about us. I'm gonna stop sharing right there. So what we wanted to do after we got that rolling is just say, what kind of questions did you have about anything that you read? So what did you read? Let me take you to this in a second. Can you see this guy? Whoops. I think I blew it. Hang on. Maybe behind it. There it is. Okay, we're good. Can you see a little plant there?
Marilyn, we're only getting like a quarter of your screen.
Okay. My screen is huge.
Yeah,
So-
I'm only getting like all I'm seeing is the USDA logo and the Rural Development Business and Cooperative Program.
Can you see something better now?
I'm not. Maybe others are seeing something.
So what I did was I zoomed it down quite a bit. So let me try this for a second. See, this always works really well when you're just doing it on your own system here. So I'm going to try and really what I've done is kind of pulled up every one of the pulled up every one of the resources that I gave to everybody. So let me try this one right here as a screen share. All right, can you hear me still?
We can hear you and we can see you.
You can see me fumbling around here.
Yeah, we got you.
So now it's not letting me opt for a screen share somehow.
Can we share and go over to the website? Aren't all the resources on our website?
We kind of could.
I mean, we don't have Jim Case on our website, but
So if you've got double screens where you are, you can just open these up from that email that I sent, because I sent all of our resources. But I know not everybody's on double screens here. And I don't see Donnie with us right now. Do you see him?
I see his name on there. Donnie. He might have stepped away.
Yeah, he would be the guy that would know exactly what I'm doing wrong here. And there's obviously something I'm doing wrong.
Here, let me see if I can share mine. Let me pull this up real quick. You guys gotta love technology, right? It works wonderful and then it doesn't.
Yeah, I know. Donnie and I were on here earlier and fussing with it and it was working.
Let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, I did find something here. So can we see your screen?
Is that mine that you guys can see, our website?
Yes. Okay. So go to resources quickly, Tracy, if you can.
Okay.
And then down to our
Going-
three. Yep, that's exactly right, right where you are. So these are the 3 resources that I sent out to everybody. This one is the introduction to cooperatives. This one right here with the little green font is how you start one. And remember, when you read the United States Department of Agriculture documentation, they are writing about cooperatives in general, not cooperatives in Montana. So you do get to have some sense of how cooperatives work, but cooperatives, remember, do not have a uniform law across all of the states. So cooperatives can have different considerations. And then the vital steps helps us talk about what would you do if you were in the process of developing a feasibility study for that. Okay, does that make some sense? Now, I'm going to ask you to, and this particular cooperative principles and practices in the 21st century that you can see right now, that literally is the textbook that Montana State University uses to teach their co-op class. So if you have read that one, and it's pretty beefy, I think it's like 120 pages or something in there, that one is giving you a lot of terrific information about what co-ops are in general everywhere. It was written by, pardon me, the University of Wisconsin, and the state of Wisconsin and the state of Minnesota have co-ops completely figured out. So we always defer to them about their ideas about cooperatives. In fact, we train to become cooperative development specialists through their efforts and the Cooperation Works organization. So that particular textbook's a pretty decent one. And you can look at any of these from our website, or I sent you links to those specifically. If you want to just come down a little bit further, Tracy, yeah, this is a good place to go. So if we were looking for what is a housing cooperative, we went out to the National Association of Housing Cooperatives and found their documentation. We found some other USDA documentation, worker co-ops. Some of this particular source that's called Steps to Starting a Worker Co-op looks pretty old because it is, but it still applies. There's great information in it. So that's a good chunk of information. Here we're getting into equity and ownership. This particular equity and ownership document that you see right here is really fabulous, and it has a copy of the tax flow chart that I'm going to show you when I start sharing my screen again. It comes out of this particular book right here, and that's an important.
This one?
The equity and ownership book called An Introduction. Yep, that one. And then as is true of other kinds of publications from the Department of Agriculture, some of them are pretty beefy and some of them are pretty small. And that little green one that was up above is one of those little small, quick and dirty, gives you some quick information. This little guy right here, Financing Co-ops, has got some quick information in it. It's about 7 pages long. So when you're looking for a handy kind of reference, that's a good one. We might as well finish our list of things here. This one talks about sample legal documents, and it's also a handbook for the directors or the board of directors of the cooperative. It's a good thing to look at, but then come to us before you file any documents, okay? Because we will have the ones that are being used for the state.
And I think it's also, I'm going to just chime in here because I think the Haver childcare study kind of taught us, be careful when you're doing that feasibility component. You know, with Eric on your meat processing one, we've incorporated in the feasibility, the person putting the feasibility is going to kind of interact with MCDC to make sure that the right association or the right chapter is utilized, because we learned in the Haver one, their first effort was a nonprofit child care center, which doesn't work in the state of Montana. So we just kind of warn people in that feasibility component to make sure you're looking at Montana co-ops. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
That's a great thing to do. The Capper-Volstead piece of legislation, and this is a pretty decent document too here, is the fundamental reason why cooperatives have these taxing advantages. So that one kind of gives you a historical perspective of it. I like the one with the dollar, picture of the dollar, Washington right there, which is the third one in that row. Income tax treatment of cooperatives. That's very useful. If you're an income tax person and you like income tax, that one's going to give you everything you need. But if you are not a person who really understands income tax, do not give advice about income tax. You're stepping over into someone else's profession. CPAs, we will check with CPAs and the experts about the tax consequences of this, but we will take you to places that give you a start in some of those conversations. Here's some more information about the taxes. Again, another report that comes from the Department of Agriculture, tax treatment of cooperatives. We tried to find the biggest list of the most comprehensive resources we could, so you didn't have to snoop the internet like we did when we first built this. So when you're talking about the board of directors and who is going to govern it, these are very helpful pieces for the board of directors. MCDC does training for board of directors, so anyone that's interested in that. And we've looked also at perhaps webinars where we might do some board of director training and putting it into pieces. I like this one down here called the Cooperative Directors Asking Necessary Questions. That alone will be the one thing that makes a board of directors successful, is being able to ask the right questions of the general manager. Finding answers to things that look like they may be okay or not okay, you know, that's really an important skill set, asking the right questions. And I think, is that the bottom of that, Tracy? I'm feeling like that's the bottom of it.
Yeah, what we have left is our
impact report from 17.
Yep, and then the impact weeks.
Okay, so then if you'll take us to our videos, which might be at the very bottom of this.
I think we actually have a shortcut. Oh, I thought they were there. Okay, hold on. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Yeah, down here.
Yep, so we've got, here are the 7 principles right here. We've got an introductory, and then we've got principle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They're short videos, 10, 12 minutes, some of them. Yep. And that really kind of gives you a good sort of foundation for what those principles mean. And then if you go even further than that, do we have our?
Right above it.
Above it, okay. So right here we have some Co-ops Make a Difference videos. So we have highlighted certain cooperatives across the state here, and had you talked to some of the people that formed it, the board of directors, the general managers, some of the members. So these are great, quick little videos, most of them less than 10 minutes, that talk about that particular co-op. So our site, we've tried to provide the best kind of culmination of some resources there, so you don't have to do too much searching around for content. Thanks, Tracy. So I'm going to take people into a couple of things that I had. I hope this works. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to share. Can you see Vital Steps?
Yep.
Can you? Excellent. Okay, so now what I want to show you is something that I think is really an important piece. Now, this piece came out of this document right here, Cooperative Principles and Practices. Madison, it looks like you're shaking your head. You recognized that one before. Here is the comparison chart that I think is very valuable. It's the quick and dirty way of taking a look at business models in the United States. This is page 47 of the book, Principles and Practices. See, Principles and Practices, page 47. Okay. If you've got that book with you right there, you can kind of flip to it. When I taught business at the college, this was one of my favorite places to go. I would take people back to this and talk about different topics that we would be using when we compare a sole proprietorship to a partnership, to an LLC company, to a subchapter S, subchapter C, and subchapter T. So this particular chart is the only one I have found that includes subchapter T, which are cooperatives. Subchapter C is double taxation. That's a conventional corporation that taxes the revenue and then taxes the dividends that are paid to the individuals, the investors. Subchapter S is a kind of pass-through that allows for subchapter S corporations, and they're called that because it's part of the IRS code that names them. Subchapter S corporations, or S corporations, are pass-through tax. So the corporation itself is not taxed, but the members are. And then subchapter T is for corporations. It says here that there's a minimum of 5 members in Wisconsin. Not true in Montana. You can have fewer, 2, yep, 3. Well, you know, they speak to how many people you have to have on your board of directors. So sometimes that requirement on the board of directors demands how many members you have to have. So I do think you're right. I think 3, you have to have a president, you have to have a secretary, you have to have a treasurer. So you can make the comparison of these different business models on all of these different criteria. How is it financed? Sale of shares of stock for our cooperative. What kind of liability exists? So for a sole proprietor, very first column, unlimited liability. That's just deadly. I would never, never, never start a business as a sole proprietor. It's easy, but you have unlimited. And by what do I mean by unlimited liability? Let's just say you mess up and you get sued. All of your personal assets are going to be exposed to a judgment against you in a lawsuit in an unlimited liability structure. I also don't like partnerships. A limited partnership limits your liability exposure to the extent that the partnership agreement identifies that. If you don't have a partnership agreement, guess what? It's unlimited liability. You've got a general partnership, but it's unlimited. And it's also vicarious liability, which means that, let's just say your partner's an idiot and he goes to Brazil with the payroll because he's pretty sure he's going to be able to double it in a casino, and he loses everything. Now, it was your partner that did that, not you, but guess who is liable for those problems that exist as a result of not paying your employees? You are vicarious. You are vicariously liable. And then the rest of the structures, limited liability companies, all the way through the corporations, are limited. That means your loss that could incur in that form of business is limited to your investment in the business, not into your birthday money in your sock drawer, like the sole proprietorship is. Not your children's college fund, not those things. So limited liability is one of the most attractive parts of corporations. Okay, so just to kind of give you a feel for this, this is a great way to look at this. Now look at the subchapter T explanation. You can see it's a little on the long side. There's a lot of reasons for that. We'll talk a little bit more in a second here about that. And then board of directors discussion, who manages the business, who governs the business, board of directors, who manages the business, hired management, general manager. Okay, I just find that one to be kind of helpful, and I wanted to bring your attention to that. I'm going to stop this share right here, and I'm going to go into a different one. This particular, can you see a flow chart? Can you see a flow chart?
Yeah, we can see it.
Excellent.
I
Okay.
shook my head, but I
Oh,
didn't.
I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
That's all right. That's all right. So this particular flow chart really is pretty comprehensive as it relates to net profit distribution. So if there in fact is a net profit in the corporation, in this cooperative corporation, how are those proceeds distributed? And this particular chart will help you. And the book that I showed you that was Cooperative Equity and Ownership, this book that's in our resource tab, this particular chart is in this publication, okay? When you get to the point where you have to worry about how the profits are going to be distributed, you want to study up on this. And I have to tell you, I have looked at this a lot, and I still have to go back and study it and read it, because to me it is a little obtuse. So it is possible that a cooperative would pay taxes on money that comes from members, sorry, that comes from non-members that have in fact patronized that store. Here's a good example. If I go to the Cenex gas station, I'm not a member of Cenex, but they'll sell me gas. And when I buy that gas, I might pay a little higher price than somebody that's a member to put the gas in my tank. And that money is sales revenue that was not generated by a member. It was generated by the public. So let's just take a look for a second. If they have net profit, I'm looking at that flow chart, and it's unallocated, means it's not credited to an individual member, then we drop down here and the corporation, the cooperative, can reinvest that into the corporation and generally does not distribute that to the members. If they retain that, there may be a tax consequence to that, which is not really sort of spoken to in this chart, but is important for you to understand. And that's why we want to find some folks who understand cooperative tax law to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in some kind of tax disadvantage by the decisions that we make. And that's very typical, like the Cenex store. Lots of people buy gas from Cenex, but they're not members. So there is a place for that revenue to go.
So is that why members might, like of a Cenex, they might charge their gas quite like monthly basis to track that?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're charging that, Eric, so that that number, their membership number, is tracked by the organization. And at the end of the year, the organization knows exactly how much gas they bought from them at the end of the year. Because
now it makes sense.
Yeah, if they bought,
just growing up with like,
yeah,
you know, local co-op gas station.
yeah, exactly. And because it may be tied to a credit card that you have or a membership card or any number of ways that they can track those sales, then they're able to reallocate those profits back to their members. So we have a little grocery store that's up in Turner, Montana, which is, you know, between Havre and Glasgow and about spitting distance from Canada. It's way up on our northern border. And that little grocery store started out as, I think, a store that was owned privately and then converted to a cooperative. And the members were so excited about having a grocery store back in their community after the grocery store had closed for a while. They said, we don't even care if we make any money. We don't care. We just want you to have the grocery store open so that when I need a can of chicken noodle soup, I can come in here and get it. So we don't want it returned. We don't want any patronage. We don't want that. But they have to track it. It's required by law. That's what makes a co-op, the return of those net profits back to the members in the form of patronage. So even if your membership says, no, we don't want it, don't care, you got to track that. So every time that customer comes in, they've got to give their number. So you are tracking those sales numbers. Now, the board of directors can make a determination that they're not going to pay patronage. That could be part of their bylaws. They could say that. But that doesn't mean you don't track it. You must track it because that is what creates, that's the definition of this creature, returning the profits back in patronage form. So this particular chart right here, it's the bane of my existence because I have to go back and read and read and read this every time I want to think my way through what the tax consequences are going to be. And I just always feel a little insecure about it. So I refer to tax experts whenever I get a little too deep in it.
I think that's an important statement that Marilyn said, that I think that we all in economic development, we know that there's only so much that we can ask or that we can provide without crossing that line. And so it is not uncommon for us or the CDSs to say, you know, you're into the tax conversation, let's connect you with a CPA. Or if it's a legal conversation, there's that fine line that we can't give that advice. We can share with them this, we can share with them how the allocation's happening, but we can't advise the individual members on what their tax consequences are going to be. That gets us into an area that we're not covered for. And so one of the things that we're going to be working on as an organization is to try to get more CPAs and lawyers into our network that we can utilize for these very reasons.
So I'm going to stop with this particular chart, move away from that guy, and take a look at, there was something else I wanted to show you. Bummer, our video didn't work. And bummer that my PDF group didn't work. And that was in the PDF. So, so the last thing that I was going to kind of share with you is going to be in that PDF group. So it's either in, in this publication, which by the way, I have copies of and can send you a paper copy if you would prefer, of this. It's either in one of these publications or in this publication, which I didn't send to you, but it's available at our website right here. Okay, so now I want to take you through the K's book just a little bit. Are you guys okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, hopefully this will work here, and I might have to.
Are you having an issue sharing your screen?
Yeah, you know, my PDFs, I've got a number of PDFs open and they can't see that, Donnie. So let me show you what I mean. So this comparison model they can see, right? Okay, but they couldn't see some of the other docs. And so I'm kind of worried about whether we're going to be able to see the case book. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that. I can see that.
Excellent. Okay, I'm not sure why, but here's what I wanted to show you. I have notes in my book, you know, ones, you know, like the lessons learned. And if you go out to Montana Code Annotated and you start to read some of those statutes about the cooperatives, you're going to find that they're obtuse. They're difficult to understand, and you're not necessarily going to get what you need out of what that statute says. So K's, an attorney that was in Havre, we hired him to create an interpretation of those laws for us. And in your K's book that you've seen, he kind of goes through each one of these. And so Madison and Eric, have you had a chance to kind of look this over? If not, don't worry.
I've started to. I think I've read about not quite halfway through it.
Yeah, great, great. So I'm going to just kind of give you some tips about what's in my book that will help you kind of pull out pieces out of this document that will be useful to you later on. So I'm going to kind of just go straight into page number 1 in here. Start at the beginning, right? Okay, so it asks you or tells you what a cooperative is, and it gives you that definition, virtually the same as what I gave you on the slide. But there is a statement down here that I'm going to highlight right here. Nowhere do the words for profit appear in this definition. That to me is a kind of an important piece, because this could lead a person to thinking, well, if they're not for profit, then that must mean they're nonprofit. And that's not true. That's not true. So that piece I highlighted and put arrows at in my publication of it, my copy of it. Okay. And then as I come down here, maybe I'm just a slow study, but I looked at this and I looked at the statutes, and then I was like, okay, so where am I at in here? Well, this number 1 is chapter 15. So write chapter 15 next to that in your book, and that's going to save you some time. Number 2 is chapter 16, and number 3 is chapter 17. And remember, we're going to kind of leave chapter 16 alone. So that's going to be important for you. Next to number 1, I write for profit, because it's the only particular structure that is a for-profit cooperative. Coming down to page 3 here. Okay, hang on. Sorry, don't mean to make you sick. I'm gonna flip it around a little bit. Do you see right here where it says cooperative associations? I put chapter 15 right there, so I would never, not be able to find my way around here. And I put a sticky note out there, like a tab on a 3-ring binder, and it says chapter 15 there too. So this is relatively prescriptive, that what I'm doing for you here, but it certainly has saved me time to have some of these notes in this book. So this one is about cooperative associations. It is the one that is in fact for profit. Was there anything as you read through some of this that you said, wait a minute, what does that mean? Kayes supports the fact that the cooperative association can engage in any trade or any branch of industry. So it's kind of maybe easier to talk about what it couldn't be, and I don't even know what that is, than what it could be. The possibilities are huge for a cooperative association. Here is this without an exemption from blue sky laws. That statement right there, blue sky laws. That's the exemption you get from the Deputy Commissioner of Securities. This section is the one I kind of refer to periodically about that whole exemption issue. The basic documents, but not the only documents, are the articles of incorporation, which remember is the intent to incorporate for a chapter 15. Bylaws, the minutes of the meeting must be taken. This is a corporation. So all of the laws that apply to corporations in the state of Montana apply to cooperatives. So some people would say, oh, they're a cooperative. Well, first and foremost, they are a type of corporation. So if you want to be in good stead with the Secretary of State, you are going to have organizational meetings, and you're going to have minutes of those meetings. Subchapter S, Subchapter C corporations can find themselves completely in trouble with the state that they are incorporated in if they cannot produce the minutes of the meeting. So the secretary must have those minutes, and each person gets a stock certificate. Now, we really haven't talked too much about stock certificates or stock in general. The stock that has a vote is called common stock. So 1 share, 1 vote is common stock. Could you sell a different kind of stock? Yes, you can sell preferred stock. Preferred stock is not voting stock. Preferred stock is preferred because it is first in line under the declaration of a patronage or dividend. So preferred stock generally costs a little bit more, and doesn't vote, but has a superior claim to the assets of the organization. That's true for any corporation.
Marilyn?
Yeah.
So for common stock, no, you can only have like one. Okay, which also means you only have one vote, but you can have additional preferred stock, but that does not mean you have additional votes, right?
You have no votes. You have no votes with preferred stock.
Okay.
So you have no governance or control on the cooperative if all you own is preferred stock. And I don't think a cooperative should sell only a class of preferred. I think they offer preferred stock to their common stockholders. That makes more sense to me. So let's say, for example, we want to build on a storage shed to our grocery store so we can store some things in there, but we need some extra money to do that. So we might have a capital campaign by selling some preferred stock to our common stock shareholders to help raise the money to pay for that expansion. And then those particular preferred shareholders, it wouldn't be all of the common stockholders, just the ones that wanted to invest, would have a superior interest to the profits of the organization. That superior interest is to the limit of 8% federally. So federal regulations require that any shares of stock that would receive a dividend that's not tied to patronage would be capped out at 8%. In the state of Montana, that cap limit is 6%. It's lower. We can't violate federal law, which is the 8%, but we can go lower. And so the state of Montana is at 6%. What other kinds of documents might you have? Certainly board policy document would be there. You might have an employee manual or handbook that would be there. You might have standard operating procedures, but these are those basic documents that you better have these. And you better have a copy of your capital stock certificate for every member that's there. Now, I'm going to say something that I said the other day. Those stock subscriptions where people sign their name on there and they make a promise to pay the $100, we have found that we really like the idea of printing that in triplicate or duplicate, but triplicate's good because you need multiple copies of it for different people. Like, for example, the person who just signed it ought to get a copy. And then the cooperative or the budding cooperative gets a couple copies. When you print that subscription, you should put a number on it. You should have the printer sequentially number those forms. Then that stock subscription form has a number that can be the membership number, that can be the stock certificate number. And now you're not in some kind of numbering nightmare that you created for yourself because you didn't do that to start out with, and everybody got a different number for each one of these classifications. So the subscription, the membership, and the stock certificate could have all the same number, and the record keeping is really streamlined that way. It also reduces the errors that could happen if you've got different numbers for different people, and people only have to remember one number when they come up to the cash register at a grocery store or at the Cenex station. That's their number. Again, the stock certificate could have that number on there, and then you would have a tracking of exactly who that individual was. Page number 6 talks about that statement of intent. And I'm right there. What do you have to put in there? The name of the corporation. So you have to come up with a name that you're going to be sticking with. Ran into this name issue just the other day. Muscle-Shell. When I looked in Salesforce, Tracy will appreciate this. I looked in Salesforce. I'm looking for Muscle-Shell. I can't find it. I'm in there. I'm going to go in and look again now that I've thought about it. Maybe it's under Roundup.
Oh, interesting.
Because when we first started to work with them, where were they at? They were in Roundup. So when we name the cooperatives that we're trying to work with, we sometimes just put the name of the city in front of it, the Roundup Grocery Store or the Roundup Investment Corporation, cooperative, or whatever it happens to be. And we might have put it in our system under the name that we called it to begin with, but it's not the name of the corporation.
I think we'll run into that with the Heifer Project too.
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, we were calling it Happy Heifers for a while, and that finally abandoned, but yeah.
I think that was when I said heifers aren't happy.
So that misnomer, we got to correct
I
it.
was like, that doesn't fit.
So, and then that intent to incorporate or statement of incorporation is really discussing all of the classes of stock you have, like common stock or preferred stock. Are those the only classes you could have? No. You could have preferred A and preferred B and preferred, I mean, really, you could be as creative as you want to be. I think you're as creative as is necessary. Don't be weirdly creative and then create yourself some kind of a nightmare in the record keeping part. But yes, you can have different kinds of stock that you offer. You have to have the location of the corporation, and you have to have in the incorporation documentation for Chapter 16, you have to have the duration of the corporation's life. In Chapter 16, remember I told you we're kind of not going to talk about Chapter 16. Chapter 16, the life of it is 40 years. In Chapter 15 and in Chapter 17, the life of it is perpetual, just like every other corporation. And then the branch or business industry sector that you're doing business in needs to be listed as well. So as you're looking at your book, where there's some things that you went, what? Some of the highlights and the messages that I've given myself are kind of obtuse, weird ones. I'm going to leap to page 12 a second. Donnie, are we close? Oh, we're pretty close to getting some Salesforce on you, huh? Distribution of earnings. I just want to take you to this statement. A distinguishing attribute is that it does not seek to make a profit for itself. It seeks to make a potential profit for its members, but the big advantage to it is the benefit that the members receive from the existence of the cooperative. On page 14, if I can bring your attention to this. Don't start reading things in here because this is the Agricultural Association and it's Chapter 16. So if you start thinking that you're reading something here that applies to 15, you're in trouble. So put a big Chapter 16 right there. If you've ever heard of grazing districts, sometimes grazing districts are formed as cooperatives and it would be under this particular type of cooperative. Talks about the property, etc. in there. And then you're going to skip most of that most of the time and go straight down to page 22 in this particular book. And now we're in Cooperative Agricultural Marketing Associations. Do you see that? That's Chapter 17. Chapter number 15, the members can be just members, just people, anybody. In chapter number 17, this Cooperative Agricultural Marketing Association, they must be agricultural producers. So if you have a membership of people and there are non-producers in there, like for example, if I started out as a farmer and I was a member of the co-op and then all of a sudden I sold my farm to somebody else, but I still wanted to be a member, shouldn't be allowed should only be members that are producers. That's the intent of it.
Marilyn, this is where we're looking at chapter 17 for the heifer project, because they're all producers.
Yes.
Like what Eric's working on with the meat processing, where there could be a layer of consumers, that would be then a cooperative association.
Well, if they are all producers of some sort. Now, here, let me take you to this page right here, which is, it's the next page, chapter number 20, or page number 23. Clearly, these associations must be formed to engage in agriculturally related businesses, but the statute defining the purpose for incorporation only requires the new association to be engaged in an activity connected with the agricultural products of its members. So we have kind of come to this definition. If I am connected with marketing, if I'm connected with manufacturing, if I'm connected with manufacturing, selling, or supplying machinery, am I in fact connected enough to these kind of activities to be classified as a producer? If we are starting a farmer's market and it is a producers agricultural marketing association, could I grow flowers? Yes. Horticulture. Yes, we could be flowers. Could I grow chickens? Yes, you can do that. What if I take my flowers and I turn those flowers into seeds? Is that a producer? Yes. So this idea of what a producer is fairly broad. But you would have to make that argument that this person is in fact a producer. I don't think it's too hard to do, but you must do it. Because if you got challenged on that, that would maybe mess up your ability to call this a chapter 17, if in fact you couldn't make the argument that it was a producer. We have called up Lee before at the Department of Agriculture and said, would that be a producer? Is a person that's related to this a producer? And it says right here, the cooperative must be engaged in those activities and the members of the cooperative must be producers. Therefore, those people are engaged in those activities. You know, it's like A equals B, B equals C, then therefore A equals C, that kind of a thing. So I bring this up to you. It seems like it's pretty straightforward, but it can get complicated, this idea of whether you're a producer or not. So yes, the heifer example is really good. The meat producers is a really good example of the chapter 17. And
If they only have a layer of producers, but if they have a layer of consumers, like if you have two layers and there's a consumer layer there, then they would not fit in a chapter 17. That would push them over to a chapter 15.
I would certainly get a legitimate interpretation of that if in fact I thought that my explanation of why they were a producer was faulty.
Would we put in, by the way, guys, I'm learning next to you guys, and Marilyn's planning on leaving me for a couple months, so I'm trying to make sure I absorb everything from her. Would you put that kind of definition of what exactly your membership would be then in your bylaws or in policies that would help define it?
I would say that would be a great place for you to defend it.
Okay.
Put it in there. But, you know, maybe getting that outside expertise. Like, for example, we had to go to Lee to get a definition of what's rural. What's rural? We had our own definition of it, but she certainly had a definition of what was rural. Yeah.
Okay.
So at this point, I think maybe we'll just kind of stop on the K's book. So Madison and Eric, are you feeling like you got some useful information from here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
Good.
much, yes.
I mean, is it like dreadfully painful the way that we're doing it, the technique we're using? I can show you techniques a little bit. Not much, but a little. So I wanted to give Donnie a couple of minutes to talk about Salesforce here before we get to that 4 o'clock hour. So Donnie, I shorted you a little bit. Does this give you enough time to just introduce?
Well, everyone was there for the Salesforce training. Just basically,
Okay.
if anyone has any questions for about Salesforce.
Excellent.
this
I'm going to
point.
stop sharing here. Yep. Okay, so maybe this is a good question time. Shall we talk about some questions you might have, or if you're thinking you need a little bit more or an additional, I don't know, we can work with you.
So one thing I wanted to kind of touch on with you guys that are new, Marilyn hit on that we also have the Montana Council of Cooperatives. So that's the trade association for all co-ops, all sectors, and we manage that and we're trying to grow on that. So if you guys have existing cooperatives in your area, we're encouraging our CDSs to kind of outreach to them, make sure that they know that we're here and that we're engaged in cooperative development. Most co-ops know that we're around, but in case they're not, we're just starting to kind of formulate a relationship with your local co-ops. So that helps solidify the cooperative community a little bit more. I think that's an important kind of future thing that we're going to start working on as a cooperative development center.
Okay. And Daryl is on the phone. I don't know if he can connect in with us, but we want to make sure that Daryl has an opportunity to ask questions if he's got them, or if he needs some additional information, or for us to kind of catch him up a little bit. He struggled getting onto the.
Well, I did speak to him. He asked me if this was recorded, and I told him yes, and so I will be sending the recording out to everyone.
Okay, thanks, Donnie. Thank you. I will, Donnie, I'll send you this PowerPoint thing that I had, and then you can send that out with the recording link. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
Donnie, why don't we send that out to all of our CDSs, just in case they wanted to kind of look it over, and
Okay.
just say, you know, we had this training with Eric, Daryl, and Madison, and we're offering, you know, if you guys want a refresher, please take a look at this. Here's the recording of the training, and then the PowerPoint, and then maybe the material that you covered as well.
Okay.
So as soon as we get done, you guys are going to have some questions. So that means that you can just drop them off to us in the email, and I will keep you in a cohort of folks, Daryl, Madison, Eric, and if that question pops up, then I will give it my best shot and send it off to you so that you can relate to it. And I'll try and connect it to the material that I've given you so that you can reference it again. You know, it's not just a cold answer hanging out there somewhere. You can get to your materials and relate it to that.
And we also recognize that a lot of this is, it's great information, but until you actually use it, it's going to be sitting there. So don't feel like you're going to, that first co-op that you go to form, you're not alone. We're here. We'll continue to walk you through the steps. Marilyn has promised me that when you guys ask me questions, I can call her and say, help me. So we've got a train to make sure that we've got backup for you guys at any point when you're out there working on these co-ops. So, Hey, Eric, who did your meat processor select for their feasibility?
I have to touch base with them. I haven't quite seen who they've picked yet. They were reviewing it. But I'll find out and then I'll shoot you a text, okay?
Yeah, I was just curious if they had found one yet. So
yeah, I think they did. I haven't followed up with them in like a week though, and I know they were coming out of Memorial Day. They were a little bit backlogged, but I will find out and I'll let you know. But
cool.
I think it's somebody here in state.
Cool. Very nice.
Okay.
So Eric, just wanted to let you know that I spent last week going to a virtual conference, where you go every day and listen to, different speakers, etc. But one of the things that's going on is meat processing and mobile meat processing. And there were quite a number of states that are saying, we've just got to figure this out because we can't have just 4 big producers in charge of our meat supply. And the states are trying to take kind of control back of some of the processing that's kind of disrupted the supply chain.
Yeah, some of my clients are, that they are historical, just rancher type producer. They're they're basically saying to hell with it, and they're taking matters into their own hands. So they are, they're tapping all those resources that ag has out. I know the mobile aspect, I mean, that to me makes a lot of sense because of the range those things can have.
Yeah.
I hope it's things like that, and it doesn't get too saturated with these kind of, let's all rush to finance big facilities. I hope there's some niche type ones like the mobile aspect. I think that's got a lot of legs to it and stuff. But yeah, it's nobody's waiting. That's what I'm seeing. It's we're gonna do this and do it now, and so the pent up demand for local has been amplified 100 times because of the last 3.5 months. So I totally agree.
Eric, there's NCAT is getting close to finishing up their study out of Browning. They've been studying a mobile meat processing unit, and it's kind of Browning, and I want to say 150-mile radius on what that would look like. So you may want to touch base with Steve and his team there in Butte and see if there's anything in that you guys can, because we've been working, like having conversations with them and WSE on meat processing and how we can kind of promote and look at cooperatives on those. But that might be of interest to some of your clients.
Yeah, and I think that one, I mean, obviously we started it before everything happened, but I think we're going to be expediting a lot of factors, getting that project up and going. And I think where I see really having a lot of those questions, and I know you guys will be involved on that project too, but that's the biggest thing I think where I'll have my questions ready is, what comes out of that and working on that project, because I think it's pretty big and it's moving fast, and I wish it would have been done like 2 months ago, but
right,
such is life.
I have said that more than once. I wish that we had like the meat processing in like we're a year like this where we're at right now was this time last year, because we would have been way better to respond to this demand. But
Yep. I'll let you know though, Tracy. I'm pretty sure they've picked someone. I just got to follow up with them. Okay.
Yeah, and it's no rush. It was just you were on.
No.
Like,
They've been they're moving quick too. It's just I got to see who they pick, because they're doing a lot of things there at the Golden Sunlight Mine. They did get a reclamation permit to start doing some work up there, so the mine presence is still going to be there. But a lot of that land though is just, the time is now to move on it. So
yep, awesome. And we hijacked you guys talking about meat processing. Sorry.
Oh.
That's okay. It's co-op stuff.
Oh, very much.
Maybe just close with just a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that you guys sort of thought about. For me, the co-op model is one of the best ways to raise capital to start a business. If you're a sole proprietor, you got to come up with that cash yourself. If you're a partnership, then you're splitting that investment, etc. But the cooperative distributes the risk and the burden of the startup capital across a whole bunch of people. That makes the raising of the capital much better, much easier. Not less complicated, just less, it's easier because it's less money for each person to have to put in. Having said that, I will tell you that many people in charge of something can create complications. Sometimes the people are the thing that creates the problems. The stuff is easy, but the people have some issues about things. So getting people to collaborate and cooperate on a big project requires, someone with some diplomacy and empathy and some understanding about group dynamics and getting people to work together. I would say that that's an important part of it. In co-ops that I've worked with that have had some struggles, it wasn't the stuff, it was the people. It was someone that was so attached to a particular idea or so attached to the way things should be that they create some interesting dynamics in the group. So kind of wanted to warn you a little bit about that. I want you to know that this is not the only business model. We at NCDC think it's the only business model sometimes, because we're all about cooperatives. But the cooperative model is very good in lots of places, but I would say it's not the only model that should be considered. So it's important for you to look at what's best for the projects that exists. And then I will leave you with a little positive note here that cooperatives, without you having to go out and do the research, I will tell you that there is great research out there about the success and sustainability of cooperatives in difficult market times. Cooperatives tend to be able to weather bad market conditions pretty well. And a good example of that might be a grocery store, where a family-owned grocery store will have to eke out an existence out of that grocery store for a family of 4, say, but a cooperative needs to pay the general manager in order for him to have a livelihood and keep inventory coming in. The dynamics of that demand on the profits, a demand on the operating cycle of the revenue that comes in is different, and it allows the store to weather some pretty bad economic downturns and bad times and come out the other end of it still able to operate. So those are just a couple of things, observations that I sort of want to tag on to the end here so that you think about those. So that's it for us. Thank you, Madison. Thank you, Daryl. I hope you can still hear us and that you're still there. We can't see you nod or anything, but we hope you got what you needed from the experience. And if you did, then you know where we are.
Yeah, thanks,
There he
thanks,
is.
Marilyn. I'm here to hear interesting stuff.
Daryl, we're glad you were able to join us, and sorry that you had a little struggle getting in there. We'll work on that. Maybe.
Well, it wasn't, yeah, no, it wasn't you. We have grandkids got the Xbox on downstairs, and that's what the issue was. So Donnie told me what the problem was, so I'll fix that for next time.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Daryl. Thanks for weighing in here. Thanks for joining us. Eric, thank you.
No, it was interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you. This has been very helpful. And I think you guys have done a great job putting all those resources on your website too. That you have no idea how helpful that is.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just have to do the journey of 1 million clicks on your own out there in internet land.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And then
Okay.
just remember that I'm here for Salesforce. If you get in there and you start entering stuff in, you run into a wall, just reach out to me, and I'm here to help.
Perfect. Thanks, Donnie.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much. I gotta run. My dog's running away. So bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, good one.